Welcome to Gallery 1 at Art Space in downtown Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm Anna Lee, the Director of Artistic Programs, and today I'm going to be walking y'all through a really exciting exhibition titled Surviving Art. This show is the culmination of 25 plus years of friendship by 4 Raleigh-based artists: Paris Alexander, Gayle, Stott, Lowry, Scull, and Gerry Lynch. These 4 friends started exhibiting their work together in Raleigh in the Warehouse District in the early 1990s. And over the course of those decades, they've continued to create meaningful work and forge pathways for other artists who've made Raleigh the thriving art scene that it is today. So one of the challenges and also one of the great rewards of putting together group exhibitions is finding ways to put really distinct bodies of work in conversation with one another, both aesthetically and conceptually. So here I'm standing next to 2 works of art, a sculptural assemblage by Scull titled From the Three Louises, and then behind me is a painting by Gerry Lynch called Africa Thread. And the reason I really love the 2 of these works together is that you're at once there's this sense of whimsy, a sort of off-kilter quality in the way in which Pat's sculptural form takes shape, which is really mirrored in these imperfect spheres that Gerry has painted behind me. And then I think in addition to that, there's the content and subject matter. So Gerry Lynch in this particular piece is very much interested in looking at African textiles. Textiles is a medium that she alludes to through these painted seams along the edges of the canvases, but also very deliberately in the patterns that you see within those spherical shapes. Something that's very much associated with women and women's work. And whereas Pat's sculpture is looking specifically at women artists throughout history. So you can see she alludes to Louise Nevelson very clearly here. I'm thinking Louise Bourgeois is on this side. I'm not sure who the 3rd Louise is, so Pat, I'll have to have a conversation with you about that later. But I just love the way that both aesthetically and conceptually, when we look at these 2 works together, we start to make connections that perhaps we wouldn't have had the opportunity to make had we been looking at them individually. So I'd like to highlight one other pair of works from this exhibition, this time by artist Paris Alexander, here to my left, a carved stone piece called The Burning, and behind me a painting by Gayle, Stott, Lowry called For Posterity. So there's a number of really interesting connections that are happening here. First, the formal quality, the way in which this hand form or the carved stone really echoes the rock formations in the landscape that Lowry has depicted. In addition to that, we start to see other really interesting connections. The most obvious, stone. Here, physical stone, here represented on the canvas in oil paint. But there's also something conceptually interesting that takes place. Well, Paris Alexander is clearly representing the palm of a human hand. We don't have a lot of information here in terms of what's necessarily being conveyed. The title, Burning, suggests something that perhaps this hand is serving as some sort of cautionary marker. It's evoking a sense of danger, perhaps, which is something that I think connects in really subtle ways with what Stott Lowry is doing in her works, which is to really catalog the natural environment, natural landscapes, while always including traces of human presence. And part of her impetus for doing that is also creating a sort of warning, a sense that the human's imprint on the landscape implies its ultimate destruction.